Hey everybody. So, I've got a question today, a question that came in from the community via email. Bit of a longer question. I'm going to summarize it though, and it may only apply to a small segment of the population. I hope it only applies to a small segment of the population, but it's valuable nonetheless. And I'll summarize it because there's a question. Okay. So this is from somebody named Julie, last initial T, Julie T. So I told you that I'd get to your question. Here it is. So, this is it. Her question is regarding, wants to know with some of the conversations I've had with CrossFitting doctors, what has crossed my path and will some of this information help her out? So first of all, whatever disclaimer is needed in the world in 2021, here's my disclaimer. We're just chatting, anecdotal stories, totally opinion, not giving out medical advice, blah blah blah, whatever you have to say, use your head, make your own decisions. We're just having a chat. So Julie says, question, in your many conversations with MDs who understand CrossFit, have you had the occasion to talk to their opinion about the limitations, or lack thereof, for people who have artificial joints? If so, is there any common conclusions or wisdom or opinions that you can share? And she goes on to say, I've had an artificial hip for 20 years, and for those entire 2 decades, the advice that she got was no running, no jumping, only use low weight, and only do high repetition. That was the extent of the workout advice that she got from her ortho, who is spectacular at hip replacements, but not necessarily interested in exercise. She says that she's a rule follower, so she's been very dutifully avoiding running and box jumps, not lifting more than 45 pounds for squats or deadlifts, this is for 20 years, mind you, and never squatting below 90 degrees. Recently, she had to have a knee surgery after having hip replacement 20 years ago. So recently had to have knee surgery, and her physical therapist was of the opinion that all the lightweight lower body lifting has potentially done more harm than good, resulting in weak musculature, weak stabilization, and leaving other parts of her body to do more work than they should, since everything is not being strengthened together as one piece. She feels like her PT feels like doing some lower body lifting would be beneficial, including squatting below parallel. And Julie, expressed the concern, because she's a CrossFitter, knows her stuff, knows her CrossFit methodology, that she's like, down the road, as you get older and older and older, she's not there yet, but isn't this lack of physical capacity, this lack of fitness, this lack of being able to pick something up off the ground or raise and lower your body weight safely above and below 90 degrees, isn't that what puts people in assisted living homes, nursing homes? And she wants to avoid that. And so shouldn't she be preparing her body in some way, shape, or form to avoid that fate? And if she isn't, so she's in this predicament, right? Should she listen to her orthopedic surgeon, who obviously is a physician and has far more credentials than she does, and so that whatever that orthopedic surgeon says carries a lot of weight. He said, don't do anything. Only lightweight for the rest of your life and never go below parallel. And then her physical therapist, who doesn't have the credentials, if you will, of an orthopedic surgeon, is of a polar opposite opinion. And here's this Julie's caught in the middle. So it's a terrible, terrible place to be. And I think we've all been there in one way, shape, or form. And so she goes on to say, thank you for saying this, Julie. I fully understand that you can't and won't give medical advice. I'm not asking for that. I just love to hear anecdotes or opinions from somebody who understands both artificial joints and CrossFit. In my dealings with physicians, do they suggest that it's all up to the athlete and what they can tolerate? Should they limit weights, sets? Should you go for a 1 rep? What's the actual deal? So that was Julie's question. It's a fantastic question. And she threw it my way because I've got a little bit of, I don't have a fake hip, but I've got a little bit of experience in here. So some quick deal on my personal background. Shockingly, it's been 21 years, which I can't believe. But in the year 2000, I was still in the military and I broke my pelvis while in the military on active duty. I had 2 plates and 11 screws put in that are still retained hardware to this day. In order for them to do the surgery, I had to have skeletal traction above my right knee. And anyone, as if breaking your pelvis isn't bad enough, so anyone who's unfamiliar with skeletal traction, what that little wonderful joy was while I was in the hospital, basically my right femur, because I broke it on the right side, my pelvis, my right femur, just above my knee, they take a drill and they drill the hole through my leg, through my femur, and out the other side of my leg, and I was awake. I obviously had anesthesia, but I was awake, watched them do this, watched them drill a hole through my femur, pulled the drill out, put a steel rod through that hole, connect that steel rod to some cables and pulley systems that had some weights on it, and it just tugs at your femur a little bit just to pull it a little bit, give it a little traction away from my pelvis at that time, because there was so much damage and inflammation and bone fragments and stuff happening in there that I had to be in that skeletal traction for a few days to quote unquote just let everything kind of settle down in there, so that when they cut me open and did the surgery on my pelvis, they could do it right and do it right the first time. And that skeletal traction, I mean, recovering from breaking my pelvis was bad enough, but that skeletal traction, when they drilled that hole through my femur, was a horrific process of physical therapy as well. I had no range of motion in my knee. I couldn't bend it at all, and all the scar tissue there it was unpleasant. Let's categorize it as that. It was a highly unpleasant period in my life. I was in the hospital for about 7 days. When I got back home, actually, my insurance company, had a military insurance, had a hospital bed delivered to my home, because I couldn't go up and down stairs. And so there was a hospital bed with, the ring to help you, pull yourself out of the bed, that I was in my living room, and that's where I slept and lived for about 3 months out of that hospital bed. I was on crutches for 3 months. Then after that 3 months, I was on a cane, which is toe touch weight, for 3 months. And then after that, I could try to start to walk under my own power, but I was in physical therapy for probably 12 to 18 months of just learning to do all of life's activities again, learning to walk and go up steps and, the whole 9 yards, and regaining the range of motion to the best of their ability in my hip and my knee. And I had some fantastic physical therapists, Sal and Hutch. I still remember your names to this day. Haven't spoken in 20 years. If by some odd chance you're watching this, much appreciated for you guys helping me get back on my feet, no pun intended. But long story short, I've got some knowledge of having a significant injury, and when I had that injury, I was an active duty SEAL at the time, and I had a fantastic doctor at the University of Louisville hospitals where I got cut open. And the doctor told me, and I had a lot of interaction with him while I was there for the 7 days, and he said, look, we're going to do a great surgery on you, we're going to put you back together, and you're going to be able to live a normal life. But he paused after he said that, and he said, but please keep in mind, and again, he was speaking to a guy who was a SEAL, he goes, you're going to be able to live a normal life, but please keep in mind, what you're currently doing is not a normal life. So you will not be able to do with your body what you're used to doing, and then from there, it went down to the whole, kind of like what Julie experienced, the below parallel, that's evil, and, all the stuff that you would traditionally hear. And so I, went through my 1.5 years of physical therapy and all that, and blah, blah, blah. So long story short, I did various types of working out. I was still in the military, have to run and do all this stuff, so I started running on it again, and there was just a lot of pain. It is what it is, when you've got that happened to my knee, my femur, and my pelvis, just tightness, pain, arthritis, imbalances, lack of a range of motion. It just kind of comes with the territory. Even if you heal fantastic and do a lot of things right, it still was such a trauma to the body that it's never going to be 100% normal like the other side. And if you have experienced that and you are 100% normal, I'm extremely jealous. That's great. So I also started learning about CrossFit in 2005. So I got my injury in 2000. I started learning about CrossFit in 2005, diving into the journals. And, I'm not a medical professional. I barely graduated college with a degree in sociology. And everything that I read in the CrossFit journals, it just made sense to me. And some of the stuff that Julie was talking about as well, as to the demands of the human body that are going to be faced on planet Earth, regardless of your feelings about them or regardless of what's happened to you. So yes, I've had the injuries that I had. Julie had the injuries that she had. But when I was, reading the CrossFit Journal, it's kind of like saying life is going to demand that you raise and lower your center of mass, and it will sometimes occur below parallel, whether it's going from a seated to a standing position, using the toilet, bending down on one leg to tie your shoe, like whatever it is, period. So it doesn't matter what your thoughts on the squat are. Life is going to force you to squat, period, end of story. Now, it may not be a 1 rep max, but you're going to be squatting. And then deadlifting, for example, is just picking something up off the ground. It doesn't have to be a barbell. It could be a bag of groceries, a spare tire if you get a flat in your car, whatever, your child. You're going to deadlift. Life is going to force you to deadlift. And so it just made sense in my mind, kind of what they said in the journals. You want to have capacity in these movements that life is going to demand that you do. You want to know how to do them well, aka learn the technique, and then you want to strengthen your body in a way that will allow you to do these movements, which are unavoidable, and to do them well and in a safe manner. It was really hard to argue with any of that logic. I was like, I don't have a counter argument to that. Like, yeah, these things happen to my knee and to my pelvis, but again, 2005 I found CrossFit, 2000 I got injured. For the last 5 years, when I thought about it this way, even though I wasn't squatting or deadlifting, I was routinely every day. Life was forcing me to do that, but I really didn't have good technique, and I hadn't really trained the lifts. I came from just a classic chest and tries, back and buys, bodybuilding kind of a background with long distance running sprinkled in. But in 2005, that light switch kind of went on, and I was all in, all into CrossFit. And in my simple reptilian brain, I kind of said, okay, well, these things that happen to my body, these injuries that happen, there's nothing I can do about it. I don't have a time machine. I've got them. They're my buddies for the rest of my life. Now, obviously, I don't want to be reckless and idiotic and, exacerbate them, make them worse. However, it would seem to make sense to me that I've got to use this body on planet Earth for the rest of my life and do squats and deadlifts and things that are unavoidable. I should probably test the waters with some intelligent experimentation and prepare myself for these movements. And I started squatting and deadlifting and everything else that would go along with the CrossFit protocol. And, mechanics, consistency, and then intensity, light loads for a long time, a little bit more when I felt confident, a little bit more. And now, here we are, 2021, and I've been squatting and deadlifting and everything up to include, 1 rep maxes, maximal effort days the entire time. Now, I'm not saying that what I've experienced in my journey means that everybody else will have a similar journey, similar results, similar all of that, so take that with a grain of salt. I'm just telling you what I've experienced. Now, this entire time, none of these lifts that I've been doing, they're wonderful, but they're not magic. Based upon what happened to my body, the right side, my right hip is still, even though no matter how much stretching I do, lacrosse ball, bands, therapy guns, it doesn't matter. It's just profoundly tight compared to my left side. It is what it is. My knee has recovered pretty well, all things considered. But I still have tightness, daily pain, just some chronic aches that happen because of what happened to my body. But here's the thing. In my mind, I was going to have imbalances, some pain, some tightness, some arthritis, no matter what, because of what happened. Those were going to be with me. So do I want to have those things, which I can't do anything about, And do I want a frail and weak body that also has tightness, pain, arthritis, and imbalances? Or do I want, to the best of my ability, a fit, capable, strong, conditioned body that also happens to have tightness, pain, arthritis, and imbalances? If those are my two choices, the constant between the two options is the pain, tightness, arthritis, and imbalances just based upon what happened. So what I can choose is, do I choose frailty and weakness, or do I choose to be as fit as possible, so that for as long, intelligently, obviously, hopefully that goes without saying, safely and intelligently, so that for as long as I can on planet Earth, I have the highest quality life possible. And if down the road, when I'm in my 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever it happens to be, and you know, and decrepitude is trying to creep in, well, I have given myself as much of a hedge and built up as much capacity to prevent that for as long as possible, under my own power. And that seemed to be the intelligent choice as far as I was concerned. And again, this is just classic CrossFit methodology, right? If you go into like the What is Fitness lecture, one of the models is the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum. And what I'm talking about here and the nature of Julie's question dovetail beautifully into that sickness, wellness, fitness continuum. And basically your fitness being a hedge against sickness is exactly where she was going with that. And that's exactly what I had in my mind, with the choices that I personally made to continue with fitness. And not just to continue with fitness, but to continue with functional fitness, to continue with CrossFit, because the variance was so important. I understood that intensity relative to the individual was going to help drive results. So I needed variance, I needed intensity, and then the third part of what CrossFit is, functionality, functional movements. I understood that functional movements, compound movements, total body movements were the ones that life demanded, were the ones that I wanted to get good at, were the ones that would not only drive my fitness forward, but would, to the best of my ability, give me that hedge later in life of when decrepitude did try to creep in. So everything about the CrossFit methodology made sense to me, and everything seemed, regardless of my injuries, I'm like, okay, I may have to modify and scale and work around some things just based upon what's happened to my body, but that doesn't change the fact of this is the path that I need to go down. This is the path that makes the most sense, and scaling is cool, modifications of things are cool, and that's that. And so that's where I've been ever since 2005. And so getting back, Julie, to your question, I can only tell you what I have experienced, but I can also tell you that, when I was involved with CrossFit Health, I met a tremendous amount of doctors and physicians and PhDs, great people, and now obviously, the people that I met at MDL1s were bought into the CrossFit methodology, right? So you can kind of be in an echo chamber as to, whether or not it's a good idea. But I've met plenty of physicians who could be listening to this conversation and nodding along at the fact that, like, yes, you have to continue to use your body to whatever degree makes sense for you based upon what's happened, but you've got to keep using your body and trying to improve its performance and strength and conditioning and fitness, because life ain't gonna stop. And so you've only got this one body to make your way through life. And also in the doctors and physicians and everyone that I crossed paths with, they've got a really tough job, in my humble opinion. There's a lot of pressure on any doctor that walks in. They get the white coat on, they get the stethoscope around the neck. I mean, there's just the image of the doctor should be all-knowing, right? Should have the answers to any secret of the human body, any scope of it, any field, everything. And that's wildly unfair to doctors. I mean, that's not what they're trained to do. And the doctors that I had good conversations with would be the first to tell you that going through medical school, they don't spend a ton of time learning about nutrition or learning about strength and conditioning. I mean, that's not what they do. If they're trying to be an orthopedic surgeon, you're plenty busy just trying to learn how to be an orthopedic surgeon. You don't have time to learn about strength and conditioning and nutrition. So for most of them, it's out of their scope of practice, and that's okay. You can't be amazing at everything. That's where CrossFit trainers and other individuals, I don't know how to fix a broken pelvis because I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I've spent my life learning CrossFit, learning strength and conditioning, so I can help folks there. Doctors can go ahead and help, people in their specialty as well. But doctors will get asked questions from patients, should I do this, should I do that? And I would have to think, this is just my opinion, with litigious as society is, with everybody loves to sue everybody, that some poor physician who just, wants to protect her, but she's taking a heck of a risk if she says, you know what, go ahead, squat, do whatever you want. Load up that bar, set yourself a PR, do some snatching, pull some heavy deads. I think you'll be just fine. All it takes is probably one or two idiots to not do that well and not use common sense, and then they go back to the doctor and say, well, she told me I could do it, so I'm going to sue you. And so I would think that most physicians would probably have to be like, err to the side of being cautious, be like, you know what, don't do that. Don't squat, don't touch heavy weight. You got to bubble wrap yourself for the rest of your life, and, good luck to you. I don't believe personally that that's probably the best advice, but I can see why some would have to say that, sadly, because of the nature of society and, again, the lawsuits and lack of personal responsibility, lack of research, etc., etc. So this is, it's a very interesting and fascinating topic. And so, anyway, that is my 2 cents for that, Julie. So you may have to find your own path and what works well for you. All I can tell you is what I've done, and I'll end with this as well. Whenever I do go back in and get a checkup or whatnot, they check the health of my pelvis, my hip or whatnot, and resist, push against my leg here. How's your range of motion? And everything's always great given the nature of my injury, like fantastic. I will never tell them beforehand what I'm doing, that I'm doing CrossFit, that I'm squatting and deadlifting and lifting heavy weights. Never will tell them that. I'll just let them test me. And then after, they're like, geez, things are fantastic. I mean, good for you. Like, see you next year. And I'll say, okay, so if you're very happy, should I keep doing whatever I'm doing? Like, yeah, great, absolutely, keep going. Then I might be like, okay, well, just so you know, squatting below parallel, lifting heavy weights, doing deadlifts, etc., sprinting, and every now and then I'll see like a slight pause of like, we shouldn't be doing that. That kind of stuff's dangerous. And they can be in this conundrum of, well, I thought it was dangerous, but this guy is doing great, and his hip is far better than most people that have this injury and gave up on physical fitness, but maybe he should keep doing what he's doing. So it's an interesting little place in the world of trying to get everyone to fully understand the benefits of moving your body through a full range of motion that you safely can, obviously, with good technique and intelligence. But it's a fight worth fighting. So that's it. All right. Enjoy, everybody. Have a fantastic day. Julie, thank you for the question, and we'll talk later.